Before starting the actual video, I want to do a small intro talking about my most recent video, which was the Ace Attorney ranking. I'm going to make this short because I know how people's attention spans can be, and I know how cruel the algorithm can be, even with small channels, even though my recommendations have been absolutely weird for the past couple of months. But I just wanted to say that I'm really glad with how the video has done recently in terms of views and performance. It makes me glad people are watching something I spent the better part of a year on, and, I'm just glad about that, and how people agree with some of my points, and yeah, that's cool. I just wanted to say I'm glad that people are watching it, and it's my most popular video that I put actual effort in, as opposed to the one we do not discuss. But yeah, I just wanted to make some sort of introduction saying, I'm glad people are watching the video. It's cool seeing people validate something you spent so much time on. I'm afraid I'm going to start repeating myself, so I'm going to cut it here. I'm glad people are watching it. Thanks for the support. On to the actual video. Kirby is one of the best video game franchises of all time. No, just one of the best franchises in general, and I'm here to tell you why. Look at him. You cannot look at him and tell me that this is not what peak performance looks like. You can't dislike this. You can't. You are not allowed. I've only played a handful of Kirby games in my day, only starting around 5 or 6 years ago when I played Star Allies. It was okay. And last year I played Forgotten Land. I 100%ed it and it was really fun. And recently I played Planet Robobot and I really liked that one too. I just wanted to show off my 3DS in this shot. For the most part, Kirby has a lot of great games and they're really fun and they're pleasant and, they make you feel nice. I just really like this series in pretty much every way. Recently, I've been wanting to find an excuse to make a video where I make something with clay, because recently I made this Katamari statue, and it is really cool, even if the Katamari is a bit small, but it's, I really like how it turned out. It's really cool, and it looks cool. But I had clay left over, and I wanted to do something else and turn it into a video, a la Studson Studio, North of the Border, those type of guys. They make cool videos. Watch them. They can do stuff a hell of a lot better than me. And also Crossing Crafts. All these people make incredible art pieces, and I just think it's really cool seeing how they do it. Basically, I wanted to do something with clay and make a video about it, and I thought the perfect test dummy would be Kirby. Because if I can make a statue with all this detail, I think I can make a sphere. Now, I didn't want to only make Kirby. I knew from the beginning that it would be pretty simple to only make Kirby. He's literally just a circle. So I wanted to make a sort of environment, a real base, which I hadn't done before. So here's a quick sketch that I impulsively did in the middle of the night, depicting what I wanted this to look like in the end. Here we have Kirby, him on a picnic blanket, which I did not do in the end, and a cake, because Kirby likes cake. They've made games solely based on this premise. I also made the sketch because I thought if I was struggling during any part of this project, I could just look at it and figure out what I was doing wrong. But I'm gonna be honest, I never used this drawing at all. It just kind of sat in the corner of the room. It was a nice visual in the beginning at least, so I had a vision in my head, but in the end it really didn't help that much because it's such a basic design. The first thing people should do when they're making some sort of clay project is to start with an armature, either with wire or tinfoil or something like that. That way you can get a majority of the shape down without using so much clay. Here, I take a bunch of tinfoil and roll it up into a ball because Kirby is quite literally a ball, and it takes some smashing, some rolling, and by the end you have a pretty nice ball to make a Kirby. And here I have a Totoro statue that I made a while ago. It was the first clay thing that I made in a long time, and as you can see, it's very rough, but the only reason it's here is because I need a reference for the wood base. Because I didn't have another wood base with me, I needed to buy a new one, but it was a good enough shape, and then we move on to the clay. Covering the ball in clay was pretty simple and mindless to me, but that really depends on what kind of clay you're using in the moment. The kind I like to use, and that I've been using lately, is medium firm cause clay. It is initially hard to use. I can really only tear apart little pieces and smooth it out as I go, but in the end you have something that feels premium and professional, I think are the words I'm looking for. This type of clay feels like something that real artists would use. Not that I'm saying I'm not an artist, but I mean, you know what I'm saying. It is a bit hard to use, like I said, it's not as malleable as something like Walmart clay, but in the end you have something that feels professional. I think I'm just gonna stick to that word. I've done this take too many times. But here I have a ball covered in clay, and I think I did a pretty good job making it smooth and making it spherical. But what is a Kirby without his tiny little nubs? Kirby's nubs for hands are 2 half-inch balls of clay that were initially going to be in the back, so he would be posed in a more relaxed state. But then I thought of that one minigame in Forgotten Land where he's fishing and he has his hands on the front, legs to the side, holding a fishing pole. And I thought, you know what? That pose is pretty dang adorable. So I changed it and now his hands are in the front. It was pretty easy for me to smooth out the hands so they don't just segment away from the body, but with them being so close together, it did make it a bit difficult to get the area in between. But a while ago I got these tools that help with that problem immensely. The kit I got off of Amazon came with a bunch of shapers and styluses that can help in a variety of ways, but here I'm using them to smooth out the area in between the hands and make this a more uniform shape. After the little nubs for hands, the next logical step would be to make his feet, which is a pretty similar process but with not as much blending. Here I take 2 slightly larger balls of clay and try and flatten them out and make them a bit pointy at the ends. But if I could have gone back, I would have made them a bit more rounded, because in the end it looks like he has really pointy feet, but really he has more round feet in the games. But afterwards we have 2 small feet that we can just smush right up next to the ends of the hands. Kirby doesn't have too much detail on his face, but I think the logical thing to make out of clay would be the eyes, which is just 2 small little sausages you just smush onto his face. And with that, we have a pretty solid Kirby made out of clay. The next thing that we need to do is put it in the oven for it to harden and cure, as per the clay's instructions, if you're a weirdo following along with me. I was really happy with how the sculpting process turned out. It has all the right details, even if they're really just basic shapes. But even without the painting process, it's still recognizable as Kirby. The picnic basket is what I struggled with the most during the sculpting process, mainly because when I was doing the initial tinfoil armature strat, the square rectangular shape I was going for ended up way too round in the end, even after an insane amount of pressing against my desk. So in the end, I have a round picnic basket for a round boy. I could call it an artistic decision, but it was not. I used the same method of applying the clay just like Kirby, which was tearing apart little bits and smoothing it out as I go, and with this general rectangular shape, it's now time to add actual detail. I wanted to give the illusion of the cross-stitch design you see on most picnic baskets, so I took my tools and started marking horizontal lines across the shape. I thought this was a fine strategy at first, until I noticed how messy my lines were, and if I started doing the same thing but vertically, it would look messy and ugly. So in the end, I decided to just keep the horizontal lines, and now it kind of looks like a stretched out beehive. What's a picnic basket without some handles? Which is what I worked on next. I could have used more cause clay, but I honestly ran out of the good kind that I had, and the other kind was way too hard. It would be impossible for me to make little noodly basket handles, so I used wire instead. The only reason I have this much wire is because I needed something thick to support the prints in my Katamari project, so I have a bunch left over, so why not? I eyeballed the general length of how long the handles needed to be, and then I cut the wire using scissors, which will tear them up in an instant. I attached the wires to the basket and added little balls of clay on the ends to hide the ends of the wires, and then made small little grippers for the middle of the handles themselves. And after that, it's time to put this bad boy in the oven as well. This is not my proudest work. It could have been better, but I did what I could. I tried my best to make a perfect rectangle, but in the end, it's an okay basket. It's okay. It's a little messy, but you know, it's okay. Kirby can't go on a picnic empty-handed though, so it's time to make a cake. As you can see, I'm using Walmart clay for this, and that's because, like I said, I ran out of my good cause clay, but I figured, you know, if I use this sparkly clay, maybe it'll give the illusion that the cake is shiny. It's sparkly, I guess, but none of that detail is even noticeable after painting everything. I spent a good amount of time making a basic plate. It's just a circle that's about a centimeter thick, about 2 inches wide. And then I made a slice of cake, which was pretty similar to making the feet of Kirby, but this time I knew that I had to make everything really pointy, and it kind of looks like a triangular prism if it was not triangles and it was actually like rectangles and 2 triangles. I forgot what shape that's called, but we have a cake, and we need to decorate it. This is based on the strawberry cake seen in Kirby's Squeak Squad. It was the most popular slice of cake I could find from the Kirby series, so I wanted to make sure to recreate it as closely as possible. I started detailing by taking little wormy bits and putting them on the edge of the top of the cake. That way it gives the illusion of icing being all over the top and dripping on the sides. I then took a bunch of small balls of clay and put them at the top of the cake, where I poked and prodded at them with one of my tools to give the illusion that it was either whipped cream out of a can or icing squeezed out of a bag with one of those pointy bits at the end. You know what I'm talking about. I've been trying to explain this for like 20 minutes. Off screen, I made a tiny strawberry to put on the top of the cake just like the game, and we then shoved it in the oven once again. Unlike the basket, I'm really happy with how the sculpting turned out on this cake. It's both the smallest and most detailed thing in this project. Before we can get into the painting process, we have to prime everything first. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure priming helps the paint adhere to the sculpture better, and it makes the colors themselves pop out more. I think it also helps if you're trying to paint light colors on a dark surface, so priming in like a light gray will help something like pink adhere easier. Priming everything was much simpler in comparison to the tense sculpting. You don't have to worry about being neat and pretty, you can just be messy and you're doing a good job. What I did here was give everything a good once over, let it dry for a few minutes, and go over it again and make sure I didn't miss any spots. After everything's dry, it's time to do the most terrifying part of the process: painting. Something I came up with after priming these things was that if you were to imagine each of these objects as silhouettes and you could recognize what they were supposed to be, then you did a really good job sculpting. However, painting can make or break all of your hard work with small details, and that scares me. I don't like painting, but you know what? We gotta do what we gotta do. First up was Kirby, which scared me because I really did not want to mess up the most important part of the project. I started painting and I underestimated how many coats it would take to make it actually pink. It took a while, but in the end it was pretty pink. And then my brush broke. That was pretty funny. I wasn't worried about not making him pink enough or not making his shoes red enough, but I was really worried whenever I eventually got to the face. I really did not want to make any blunders here. The first thing I did was take a ball stylus, dip it in black paint, and try and go over the eyes like it was a pencil, because I did not trust my hand with a brush. In the end, the eyes looked fine, and then I drew a tiny smiley face and gave him blush on the sides. I then took some white paint with the ball stylus and made some light in his eyes and gave him some space blue under part of his eyes. You know, the blue part of Kirby's eyes. I did that, and I was worried for nothing. This is probably the cutest thing I've ever made, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm looking at him right now, he's really cute. I was worried over nothing. The basket wasn't anywhere near stressful for me to paint, because I knew from the outset I would just paint it one solid color, being a khaki brown. The basket was a bit messy, but in the end I'm glad that it was easy to paint because that's less stress for me. I wish I had a more orangey reddish type brown instead of the khaki brown. I don't know how to mix that type of brown, but yeah, I think it would have been nicer than the khaki brown that I had. And off camera I painted the handle grips with a mix of the khaki and some black. It's time to get worried again because now we're working on the cake. It's much smaller and more detailed than the other models, so it's easier to mess up. I started by painting the plate just a plain white that took an absurdly long time to dry, and then I painted the strawberry, which took an equally long time to dry, and it was finally time to actually start the cake. I mixed some white with just a little bit of pink to create a very light pink to act as the icing, and I slathered that all over the top and on the back. And then I mixed some yellow and white to act as the inside of the cake. The cake in-game is much lighter than how I painted it here, but I felt it would be a better contrast than everything looking almost white. And then I took another stylus and started drawing the little design inside the cake. Off screen I also made some cinnamon sticks, I think. They look like sticks in all the pictures I could find, so we're gonna call them sticks. And I painted them a reddish brown, which would have been convenient earlier. And I started gluing everything together. I was really scared of the gluing process because super glue sucks, but it's also really strong, and in the end, the cake looks pretty solid. All we have left to do is to make a base. I took one of these 8x6 pieces of wood you can find at Walmart, and I painted a majority of it green. I left a couple of open spots so I could later paint them a darkish brown color to act as patches of dirt. I thought about making flowers for the base, but I thought they would either be too big or they would just look like circles that were painted a color and just kind of put on the base. So instead I took a brush and I just started tapping random parts of the base. I painted the edges just a plain black because that's just what I do, glued everything in place, and we're finally done. But not before we add a small butterfly on top of the basket that will make the average Kirby fan go mentally mad. Now we're done. I'm really glad with how this turned out in the end. I admit I don't really like the basket the more I talk about it out loud, but everything else is cute and detailed and I really like it. I've wanted some excuse to make another clay project and an excuse to make this into a video, and it just occurred to me that, you know, I like Kirby. Let's do Kirby. And while making this video, I listened to a lot of Kirby iceberg videos, so, you know, all that knowledge is circling in my brain. I hope it was fun to watch me go through this journey of Kirby and making a little diorama. I like watching people make things. It's fun, it's pleasant just seeing how they go about the process. I hope I teach somebody something based on how I do things, and, you know, maybe someone can tell me something better so I can improve on my personal projects in the future. Any closing notes my brain might have? Play Kirby. Play the Kirby games. You know, if you want to do Kirby art, make Kirby art. Do Kirby things. Kirby is awesome. We love Kirby. I just want to say, like how I did in the intro, I'm proud of how the Ace Attorney video has performed, and I'm glad people like it. But I hope videos like this do just as well, because I didn't spend months upon months making a Kirby statue, but, you know, I put effort into all these videos, and, you know, it's cool when people watch them, people see what you make. It makes people strive to do more and to do better. So, you know, maybe I'll make another clay video in the future with better editing or better recording. This is a learning experience for me, even though I've been doing videos on the internet for like 10 years. But yeah, hope you enjoyed my shenanigans. I only said one curse word in this entire video. Hell yeah.